Welcome to the world of science fiction Neon's Alien. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and tap the notification bell so you never miss a new story from Neon's Alien universe. The air was full of fire. Sergeant Joran Blake moved fast through the broken hallways of Outpost Delta. His helmet visor flickered with red alerts. Heat levels rising, oxygen dropping, enemy fire detected. But all he could hear was screaming and smoke. His squad had already left. The evacuation had begun 10 minutes ago. The dropships were lifting off. The war on Veltrax 9 was ending, but not in victory. It was a retreat. Blake's boots crunched over shattered glass as he moved toward the eastern wing. His orders were clear. Get out. Everything not human is expendable. He should have followed those words. But then he heard it. A small cry. Weak. Choking. Not a soldier. Not a threat, just a child. Blake turned toward the sound. He kicked open a half-collapsed door and stepped into the smoke-filled ruins of a nursery, alien design glowing with faint purple lights, cribs shattered, walls burned, and there, under a fallen beam, something moved, a small arm, thin, violet, glowing veins under the skin, a Valari child. Damn it, Blake muttered. He dropped his rifle and ran forward. The beam was heavy, hot, but he lifted it anyway, teeth gritted, muscles burning. The little one, barely the size of a backpack, was curled in a ball, eyes wide and glassy. She didn't scream now. She just stared, terrified. Blake knelt. Hey, you're okay. I've got you. He didn't know if she understood English. Probably not. Still, she reached for him. He wrapped her in a heat blanket from his belt and scooped her up. Warning, dropship departing in 90 seconds. Hold on, he told her, running back the way he came. Gunfire cracked in the distance. The building shook. A piece of ceiling crashed behind him. As Blake reached the launch platform, the dropship was powering up. Wait, he shouted. The pilot's voice came over comms. Blake, what the hell are you doing? That's a Valari. Brat, she's just a kid. No time for this. Get in or we leave without you. Blake didn't answer. He just jumped inside. The hatch sealed. As the ship lifted, Blake sat on the floor, holding the alien child in his arms. She was quiet. Her big purple eyes watched him closely. Then, her hand reached up, touched his cheek. He froze. Not from fear, but from something strange. Her skin was warm, not cold like most Valari adults, and her touch felt more like a whisper than contact. Across the troop cabin, two Marines stared. One muttered, "You serious, Blake? That's the enemy." Blake didn't reply. The child closed her eyes and curled against him, and Blake just held her tighter. 3 days later, Blake woke in the medbay of the orbiting fleet ship Vanguard 6. His shoulder was bandaged. His gear was gone. And the first thing he asked was, "Where's the kid?" The nurse blinked. "You mean the alien?" "Yeah, the small one. She's alive. They put her in an observation room. Says she won't eat. She just waits." Blake sat up, groaning. "I need to see her." Minutes later, he stood at the glass window of the observation chamber. The child sat alone, wrapped in the same heat blanket he'd given her. She looked thin, tired. When she saw him, her eyes lit up. She ran to the window and pressed her hands against the glass. He smiled softly and did the same. Behind him, Commander Daleson spoke. "You know this is against regulation. She's not a threat. She's a Valari, Blake. You saved the enemy. She's just a kid." The commander paused. "Her people will come looking for her." "I hope they do," Blake replied. "Why?" He turned. "Because I want them to see we're not all monsters." In the chamber, the child finally smiled, her first real smile. And, in that moment, Blake felt something deep in his chest. Not regret, not doubt. Just a quiet thought that would grow stronger every day. "I didn't save her life. She saved mine." Sergeant Joran Blake stood in front of a steel door marked Containment Xenobiological Holding. His uniform was wrinkled. His arm was still sore from the beam that fell on him, but his eyes were locked on the window, ahead. Inside the glass-walled room sat the Valari child. She sat curled in the corner, her small hands pressed tightly against her knees, glowing skin dim under the sterile white light. A dish of untouched food sat on the table. Blankets were, folded neatly, unused. She was waiting. For him. Blake turned to the officer beside him. "Open it." The guard shook his head. "Orders are to observe only. Direct contact prohibited unless cleared by command." Blake stepped forward. "She hasn't eaten in days." The man hesitated. "She won't let anyone near her. She screams when we enter." "She's scared," Blake said. "She doesn't know where she is. She only trusts me." Behind them, Commander Daleson walked in, arms crossed. "You're not helping your case, Blake." Blake didn't turn. "She's not a case, sir. She's a kid. She's the enemy. She's a child," he said again. "She barely speaks. She flinches when someone moves too fast. She's not dangerous." The commander raised an eyebrow. "You think the Valari agree? You think her people wouldn't kill a human child?" Without blinking, Blake finally looked at him. "That's why we're supposed to be better." Daleson stepped close. "Your orders were to evacuate, not rescue alien life. You disobeyed, and now you've made this ship a target." Blake said nothing because he already knew that, and he didn't care. That night, the lights in the containment area dimmed. The girl, they still didn't know her name, began to cry softly. Only one man heard her, because only one man was standing outside the glass again. Blake pressed his palm to the barrier. "I'm still here," he whispered. The child slowly crawled to the window. She touched the same spot. The next day, command called a meeting. The room was filled with ranking officers, analysts, and political advisors. At the center of the discussion, the rescued Valari child. Some wanted to transfer her to the Alliance for questioning. Others wanted her released on a neutral planet. A few wanted her sent back, to test if she could be used for diplomacy. But most wanted her gone. "She's a liability," a naval captain said. "A security risk. Her species is still technically hostile." "She's a symbol," Blake said from the back. "One that proves not every Valari is a killer." "And you're a soldier, not a diplomat," another officer snapped. "This isn't your decision." Blake stood. "No, but I'm the one who carried her out of a burning building while everyone else walked away." Silence filled the room. Blake kept his voice steady. "She's not a weapon. She's not a spy. She's just a scared little girl who doesn't deserve to be treated like a bomb." Commander Daleson narrowed his eyes. "You're too close." Blake didn't back down. "Maybe we all should be." Later that night, the door to the containment room opened. Blake stepped inside slowly. The girl looked up from the floor, startled, at first, then relaxed. She stood and walked into his arms without a word. He picked her up gently. For the first time, she didn't tremble. "I have to call you something," he whispered. She looked up. Her voice was small. "Tali?" Blake blinked. "Tali, is that your name?" She nodded once. "Tali," he said again. "Okay, I like that." In the following days, Tali began to speak more. Her translator module adapted fast. She repeated Blake's words, copied his posture, tried to walk like him. She laughed once, when he dropped a data tablet. It was the first time any crew member had heard her make a sound that wasn't fear. But not everyone was smiling. Deep in the war room, new intelligence came in. A Valari warship had sent a private signal, encrypted, directed, to Vanguard 6, and it carried only 2 words: "Return her." The main screen in Command Center 2 flickered with strange symbols. Bright purple glyphs twisted across the black interface, Valari language, but not standard dialect. It was older, formal, almost ceremonial. The room was silent. Every officer stared. Even the computers needed time to decode it. Sergeant Joran Blake entered moments later, still wearing his duty uniform and carrying a small ration box for Tali. Commander Daleson turned to him. "You need to see this." Blake placed the box down slowly. "What is it?" The room technician cleared his throat. "It's a direct signal. From a Valari ship. Long range. Encrypted." Blake frowned. "Encrypted?" The technician nodded. "Level 7 encryption. Only. A few Valari leaders use it. Military class. High command." Blake stepped closer to the screen. At the center of the message were just 2 words, translated into English. "Return her." Then a pause, and another message followed. "She is not your war trophy, she is my daughter." Gasps filled the room. Even the commander took a step back. Blake blinked. "Daughter?" The technician confirmed. "Yes. There's more. The signature seal. It's from Commander Melira." The name made several officers freeze. Melira, a known name, feared, a Valari general, war strategist, leader of the Tarsus siege. Blake had read her reports. Her campaigns were brutal. Her voice had never once reached human comms. Until now, she's like, "A killer," someone whispered. "And she's the mother of that kid," Daleson added coldly. He looked at Blake. "You understand what this means?" Blake nodded slowly. "She's not just a refugee, she's a political key, a military heir. Tali, the soft little girl who clung to him when she was scared, the one who laughed at how he held a spoon, the one who fell asleep with her hand in his. She was the child of a commander, a Valari princess in a way." Blake felt his chest tighten. He thought back to how she looked at him, how she smiled when he taught her how to say, "safe." And now her mother, the most feared Valari tactician alive, wanted her back. Another message flashed on screen, a live channel request. "To the human who carried my daughter out of fire, speak with me." Blake looked at Daleson. The commander sighed. "We shouldn't open that line. It could be a trap. She could be scanning our signal, recording our systems." "She's not asking for our ship," Blake replied. "She's asking for me." Daleson narrowed his eyes. "And you're going to talk to her?" Blake stared at the screen, then nodded. "Yes." The screen blinked again and opened. A figure appeared in soft purple light. Tall, elegant, fierce, eyes glowing like Tali's, hair woven with silver threads, armor shaped like a monarch's blade. Melira. She spoke first. "You are the one who saved her." Blake straightened. "Yes. My name is Joran Blake." Melira studied him. "You are not what I expected." He replied. Neither was she. There was a pause. Then Melira said something Blake didn't expect. "I owe you." Blake blinked. "You owe me?" "I owe you a life debt," she said. "You touched my bloodline, protected it, and did not use her as a shield. You gave her comfort. My daughter speaks your name." She paused again. "She calls you Protector." Blake's throat tightened. Melira leaned slightly forward. "I ask this. Return her to me, and I will give you safe passage. No harm will come to your ship, no spies, no weapons, no tricks." She looked almost tired. "I just want my child." Blake didn't answer immediately. He thought of Tali's small hands, her trust, her innocence, how she clung to his sleeve when strangers entered the room. "What if she doesn't want to go?" he asked softly. Melira's eyes narrowed. "She is a child, but she's not scared with me. I am her mother," Melira said firmly. "She belongs with her people." Blake shook his head. "She doesn't belong to anyone. Not me, not you. She's her own." Silence. Then, surprisingly, Melira smiled, then let her choose. Blake looked up. "What?" "I will come to neutral ground. You bring her. I will come unarmed, alone. You speak with her. I will speak with her. And we ask her. If she chooses you," Melira said, "I will not stop her." The signal ended. Blake stood motionless. A child's choice between blood and bond. In the observation chamber, Tali traced shapes on the glass again. She drew two stick figures. One was tall, armored, glowing. The other wore a flat helmet, and she stood between them, holding both their hands. The landing site was silent. No guns. No war cries. Just cold wind sweeping across the flat gray rock of Aaron Field, a known neutral zone, where bloodshed was forbidden by both sides. Sergeant Joran Blake stood at the base of the ridge, his boots crunching softly on frost. His eyes scanned the horizon as the small figure beside him tightened her grip on his hand. Tali, the Valari child he'd saved from fire, the child who now stood between two worlds. Behind them, a small human escort ship waited with its engines, running, ready to leave or flee. Blake carried no weapon, just a small tracker in his belt and a deep sense of doubt. Tali looked up at him. Will she be angry? Blake knelt beside her. No. I think she'll be afraid, like you were. Why? Because sometimes even strong people forget how to feel. Then from the far end of the field, a dark silver ship descended, sleek, silent. Not a warship, a diplomatic one. Its lights dimmed, its shields lowered, and as the ramp lowered, Melira stepped into view. Tall, radiant. Her long cloak trailed behind her like a royal river of starlight. She wore no armor today, only ceremonial robes etched with ancient markings, symbols of motherhood, of loss. Her hands were empty, but her presence felt heavy. Tali stepped behind Blake slightly. He whispered, "It's okay, I won't let go." She nodded and took one step forward. Melira stopped 10 meters away, her eyes, bright violet, sharp like blades, locked onto the child. Then slowly she knelt, her voice cracked for the first time. Tali. The little girl looked up, then down, then forward again. Finally, she let go of Blake's hand and ran, right into Melira's arms. The alien woman wrapped her daughter tight against her chest. She didn't cry. She didn't speak. She just held. Her Blake turned away, giving them space. But even without looking, he could feel something. Breaking. Something old and cold inside the Valari commander. After a long while, Melira stood again, holding Tali's hand gently. She looked at Blake and walked toward him. "You kept her safe," she said softly. "I tried." "You gave her warmth," she added, "even when your kind called her the enemy." Blake nodded. "Because she wasn't." Melira looked down at her daughter. She used to cry in her sleep. Now, she sleeps in peace. There was a long silence. Then Melira said, "She chose you." Blake blinked. "What?" "She says she wishes to stay with you." Tali looked up and nodded once. Blake knelt again. "You're sure?" The little girl looked serious now. "You came back for me. I was small, afraid. But you didn't leave." She touched his chest. "Your voice makes me feel like home." Melira didn't interrupt. Instead, she looked up at the stars. "The war taught me to protect my people with fire, to command armies, not children. I was not there for her when the building fell." Blake looked at her, steady. "You are here now." Melira's hands trembled slightly. She reached forward and placed something in Blake's palm. A Valari crystal medallion. Silver, glowing faint blue. "It is tradition," she said, "to give this to those we entrust with blood. You are now part of her thread. And she is part of yours." Tali stepped between them, holding both their hands. "You don't have to fight," she whispered. "You can both be in my people." Melira smiled softly, then turned to Blake. "I cannot stay long, but I will return if she ever calls." Blake nodded. "She'll know how to find you." Melira bent down one last time, touched Tali's forehead gently and whispered something in the Valari language. Then she turned and walked away. As the silver ship rose and vanished into the stars, Blake felt the warmth of the child's hand wrap around his again. He looked down. Tali grinned. "Let's go home." The ship was smooth and silent as it slipped through dark space. Joran Blake sat near a large curved window, watching unfamiliar stars pass by. This was not a human vessel. The walls breathed. The seats adjusted to his body without command. The air smelled faintly of citrus and cold metal, but what unsettled him most was the quiet. No radio chatter, no orders, just soft hums and low melodic tones. Tali sat beside him, her small hands resting in her lap. She had been quiet too, different from the cheerful, curious girl she had become with him. Now, she looked nervous, like she was crossing a bridge she couldn't turn back from. "This okay?" Blake asked gently. She nodded. "Yes," then leaned against his arm. Across the room, Melira stood with her hands behind her back, watching her crew but saying nothing. Her presence alone seemed to keep everyone in line. This was her ship. But for the first time, Blake didn't feel like her prisoner. He was here because he chose to be. Hours passed. Then the ship slowed and began descent. Outside the window, a blue and gold planet came into view. Shimmering clouds spun over massive oceans and glowing city clusters. It was Tavkar, the Valari capital moon. Melira walked over as the ship lowered. "We have entered protected space. Your presence has been cleared. But expect eyes and questions." Blake nodded. "Understood." She looked at him carefully. "I hope you know this is not a human world. Not all will be kind." "I don't expect kindness," he replied. "I expect truth." The ship landed inside a glowing dome of light. Valari guards, tall, silver-skinned and expressionless, stood by in long robes. No weapons in sight, but Blake could feel the tension in the air. They weren't used to seeing humans here, and certainly not welcoming them. Blake stepped out slowly, holding Tali's hand. She looked up at the alien city around them. Glass towers bent with the wind. Floating gardens hovered between platforms. Glowing birds with crystal feathers flew overhead. Blake had never seen anything like it. Neither had any other human. Melira led them into the inner levels of her residence, part palace, part temple. The walls shimmered with living light. Paintings moved softly. Voices echoed, singing in languages Blake didn't know. Inside a private chamber, she offered him a drink, clear and warm. "It calms tension," she said. He took a sip. It tasted like snow and fire at the same time. Later, they walked together in a sky garden filled with red grass and whispering stones. Tali chased a glowing winged beast through the air, giggling. Blake watched her and smiled. "She's adapting fast," he said. "She is stronger than me," Melira replied. Blake looked at her. "She's also like you, sharp, watchful." Melira's gaze softened. "I was not there when she needed me most." "You were." A pause. Then she added, "You didn't just save her, Blake. You filled the space where I had failed." Blake didn't know what to say, so he just nodded. That night, he was given a guest chamber, clean, warm, quiet. Tali insisted on sleeping in, a smaller room beside him. Before she fell asleep, she looked up at him and asked, "Will you stay here? Forever?" He hesitated. "I don't know." Her voice dropped to a whisper. "I want you to." Across the hall, Melira stood by her own window, looking out over her city. She had won many battles, but none had shaken her like this human soldier, the man who didn't curse her, didn't demand, didn't take. He just showed up, again, and again for her daughter. She whispered into the night. "Perhaps peace doesn't come from flags, it comes from people." The chamber doors opened with a soft hum. Joran Blake stepped into a round room of crystal and firelight. Above him, the ceiling reflected starlight from the skies of Tavkar. All around, 12 tall Valari figures sat on silver chairs, their robes dark and eyes sharper than blades. This was the Valari High Council, the oldest ruling body in their system. They had judged wars, traitors, and rebellions, and now they were here to judge him. Beside Blake stood Maylira, cloaked in regal silver. Tali had not been allowed to attend. She waited in the sky garden under watch. Blake stood straight, his hands open at his sides, showing no threat. But inside, his heart raced. One of the council members, a female with bright amber eyes, spoke first. "Human soldier. Do you know why you are here?" Blake nodded. "Yes. You crossed into our territory, without treaty, without invitation." "I did," Blake said calmly, "because your commander called me." Maylira nodded beside him. Another council member, older and colder, leaned forward. "She called you to return stolen blood." "She asked me to bring her daughter home," Blake replied. "And I did." The amber-eyed counselor tapped her finger. "But you did not leave afterward." Blake met her gaze. "No, because the child asked me to stay." Murmurs echoed across the circle. A third voice joined. This one deeper, male, bitter. "You confuse kindness with diplomacy. Or is it guilt?" "I confuse nothing," Blake said. "I saved her because no one else would. And I stayed, because she's not just someone I saved." He paused. "She's family now." Gasps. The word family meant more to the Valari than it did to most species. To them it was bond, thread, soul line. A human using that word about a Valari child was unheard of. Maylira stepped forward. "My daughter, by law, has the right to choose her guardian until she reaches the crown age. She has chosen him. But he is human," a counselor snapped. "And he is more honorable than half the blooded sons in this chamber." Maylira fired back. The room went still. Never had Maylira spoken so boldly against her own rulers. Another counselor leaned back, speaking softly. "Even if we accept this bond, what of his presence? He cannot live among us. He is not one of us." Blake's voice cut through. "Then make me one." Silence. Even Maylira turned toward him. "You would join our people?" the eldest asked slowly. Blake nodded. "If that's what it takes to stay with her, yes." One counselor laughed bitterly. "You'd give up Earth? Your place? Your rank?" "I already gave that up the day I carried her out of the fire." The council went quiet. A vote was called. Each member touched their hand to a glowing crystal before them. The results appeared above the center of the room. 12 small lights. 8 blue, 4 red. Approved. Maylira let out a slow breath. Blake didn't smile. He only asked, "What now?" The eldest counselor stood. "You are not Valari, not yet. But you are now bound. By law, by blood. You will be tested. I accept. You will be watched. I expect it. And you will never again be called outsider if you honor your word." Blake bowed his head once. "Then I will." Outside in the sky garden, Tali waited nervously. She turned when the doors opened. Blake walked out, and she ran straight into his arms. "Did they say yes?" He smiled. "They said yes." She grinned. "Then you're one of us now." Nearby, Maylira watched them quietly. She had commanded fleets, crushed uprisings, planned war on entire colonies, but never had she seen a warrior make peace just by choosing to care, and that made him the most dangerous man she'd ever met. The war didn't end with an explosion. It ended with a story, and that story began with a human soldier who refused to walk past a crying child in smoke. Jaren Blake stood on a high platform carved into the cliffs of Tavkar, the Valari capital moon. Below, thousands of Valari citizens stood in silence, looking up at the human who had once been their enemy. Beside him stood Tali, wearing a ceremonial sash of light blue silk, and beside her, in regal armor and grace, stood her mother, Maylira, the once feared commander now hailed as a peacemaker. This was the first interspecies bonding ceremony ever held in open view. No guns, no guards, no politicians in armor, only people and truth. Blake stepped forward. His voice, quiet at first, was carried by soft sound fields across the sky. I was a soldier. I fought because I was told to. I saw enemies in every shadow, and I thought I understood war. He looked down at Tali. But then, I found her. Small. Afraid. Buried under fire and dust. She didn't ask for help, she just looked at me. He paused. That look changed everything. Murmurs moved through the crowd, not fear, not anger, just listening. I carried her out not because she was Valari, Blake continued, not because it was strategy, but because she was a child, because no one else would. He looked at the council seated in silence nearby. She made me question what I'd become, and her mother, who once could have killed me on sight, chose to understand instead. He turned to Melira. She didn't lower her weapon. She dropped it. A soft hum rippled through the crowd. Valari rarely applauded, but their skin began to glow in unison, a shared expression of emotional acceptance. Blake knelt before Tali. Today, I ask for no reward, no title, only this, to protect you and help you build a future better than the war we all come from. Tali reached into a satchel and pulled out a woven threadband, a Valari family symbol. She tied it around Blake's wrist. You're my protector, she said softly. Now you're also my heartline. Melira stepped forward. In full view of her people, she placed a mark on Blake's shoulder, a glowing crest only given to those trusted with family blood. When it faded, she whispered, You were once our enemy. Now you are my equal. At that moment, the platform lights dimmed. A crystal beacon pulsed at the center of the city, and for the first time in Valari history, a human symbol was added beside the ancient Valari seal. It was not a military flag. It was a drawing. Simple. Childlike. 2 hands, one human, one alien, holding a third, smaller hand between them. Weeks passed. The story of Blake and Tali spread across systems. Where there had been war, there were now meetings. Where there had been silence, now there was exchange. And where there had been hate, there was finally hope. On Earth, some called him a traitor. Others called him a hero. But Blake didn't care. Because every night, he sat on the steps of the Sky Garden with Tali beside him, watching stars she had once been afraid of. Now she chased them. One evening, as they watched the sunset blend into the clouds, Tali leaned against him. Did I stop the war? She asked. He smiled. You started something better. In another chamber, Melira stood before the council. A younger member asked, Do you regret your choice? She shook her head. No. For the first time, I did not choose strategy. I chose peace, and it chose me back. Final log, Joran Blake. Year 1 of the Accord. I thought I was just a man who broke the rules, but maybe breaking them is how you build something new. One bond, one child, one choice at a time.